One of the most beloved and storied racehorses of the last 50 years died last weekend. He had humble beginnings and was owned by a group of high school friends in none other than Sackets Harbor, the small community on Lake Ontario just outside Watertown. Their decision to buy one horse took them all the way into the horse racing history books. That's today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Clarkson University, offering over 95 programs of study with campuses in the Hudson Valley, Central, and Northern New York. More at clarkson.edu.
Hi, I'm Mimi Feiereisel. It's Friday, July 21st. First up, Wednesday night was the Powerball drawing, and several winning tickets were sold here in the North Country. A second prize ticket valued at $1 million was purchased at Sliders Food Mart in Clayton. A third prize Power Play ticket worth $100,000 was sold at the Cornerstone Drug and Gift Store in Rouse's Point. The next Powerball drawing is Saturday night. The estimated jackpot is $20 million. After a severe weather event like the flooding in Vermont and northern New York last week, there's a lot of work to be done. Cleanup, restoration, rebuilding. This week, the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services has been assessing damage in hard-hit communities in Clinton, Hamilton, and Essex counties. Destroyed homes, fractured roads, and extreme erosion have been reported in the central and northeastern Adirondacks, from Indian Lake to Saranac and Dannemora. Most roads closed by the flooding have been reopened, with a notable exception, Route 28N, which connects Newcomb and Long Lake. It's expected to reopen sometime next week. Of course, recovery takes money. Individual fundraising efforts are listed on the Long Lake website, and the Adirondack Foundation has activated its Special and Urgent Needs Fund to give financial support to towns and people hard hit by the flooding. They're taking donations and will be distributing money across the Adirondacks. That fund was originally established after Tropical Storm Irene. New York State also extended application deadlines from July 28th to August 11th for several resiliency-related state grants. That's to give impacted communities more time to apply for funds that support water infrastructure and flood mitigation. Last week's floods were also devastating to farmers across the Northeast. Dairy farmers, fruit groves, and flower farms were all impacted by the heavy rain, which came at a time when many plants were too early to harvest, but are now too late to replant in the region's abbreviated growing season. And it's not over yet. There could be more flooding this summer. Another round of heavy scattered thunderstorms is predicted for tonight, and a flash flood watch has been issued for all of northern New York until early Saturday morning. One of the most storied racehorses of the last 50 years died last weekend in Saratoga Springs. Funnyside was adored by the public for being a blue-collar horse that came agonizingly close to capturing the 2003 Triple Crown. Sackatoga Stables confirmed in a tweet that Funnyside died from complications due to colic. The horse was owned by a group of friends from Sackets Harbor, not far from Watertown. Former NCPR reporter Brian Mann put together a profile of those friends back in 2003 when Funnyside retired. He reports that they got into the thoroughbred horse racing business on a whim, but that whim took them into the horse racing history books.
This story starts back in 1995 when John Constance and a group of high school buddies from Sackets Harbor were looking for a new hobby.
We were just sitting around having a couple of cocktails, as we're often doing, and the idea came up to buy a horse, and from that day forward, our life has changed.
Constance is a retired optician and the former mayor of Sackets Harbor. He and a half dozen neighbors, most still live on the same street, pitched in $5,000 apiece. They bought some thoroughbreds and were having a blast, but nobody took them seriously until they stumbled across an inexpensive gelding named Funnyside.
We got him kind of by accident, if you will, just luck.
They'd found an experienced trainer by then and a good jockey, and they even had uniforms. But co-owner Harold Kring, who runs a small construction company, says it was still just a small-town lark.
The colors that you see, the maroon and gray, that's our school colors from high school.
Then something marvelous happened. In 2003, Funnyside qualified for the Kentucky Derby.
They're coming down to the final furlong, and the gutsy gelding Funnyside has a narrow
Harold Kring remembers watching the final stretch.
It was like being an out-of-the-body experience. It's the best thing I can think about it, because I can still see the horse running down the stretch, but it's like tunnel vision. Everything seemed cloudy around it, like everything was going in slow motion. I could not believe my eyes. I was like, that's our horse out in front. I just kept waiting for something to fall apart.
But Funny Side actually pulled away in the final seconds, winning decisively.
Funny Side has won the 129th Kentucky Derby.
He was bred in New York, and no New York bred had ever won the Kentucky Derby before, and he goes into Kentucky and beats all the blue bloods.
David Grenning is a veteran track reporter for the Daily Racing Form. At first, Grenning says, attention focused on Funny Side's quirky pedigree and his even quirkier owners. But then Funny Side won again at the 2003 Preakness.
His Preakness was a devastatingly easy victory. He really walloped him that day, and leading you to believe that, the Derby was no fluke and that this horse had a real chance to win the Triple Crown.
Funny Side wasn't able to repeat at the Belmont Stakes. Only 11 horses have ever managed that feat. The last was a horse called Affirmed in 1978. But Funny Side had become an icon, especially here in New York State.
I like because he's from our area, a local favorite.
Friday afternoon, at a celebration in Saratoga Springs, marking Funny Side's retirement, Beatrice Jones is wearing a sandwich board decorated with Funny Side memorabilia.
I have giant pictures of when he won the Kentucky Derby. And then they named a street after Funny Side, beer after him, ice cream, and the horse even whinnies.
The guys from Sackets Harbor watch as Funny Side is paraded one last time into the winner's circle.
Hear that beautiful horse coming out. Hear that crowd cheer.
Funny Side munches on a giant granola cake made to look like a Rolex retirement watch. Jose Santos, the jockey who rode Funny Side, has announced that he too is hanging up his colors.
I came all the way from Chile chasing a dream, and I got the dream, the American dream to win the Kentucky Derby once, and I did it with Funny Side.
As the party winds down, another race thunders past, more hopefuls chasing greatness. Harold Kring says he'll head home to Sackets Harbor, knowing that their run was special.
We're the small guys in the game, and we came out on top with a horse that nobody thought had a chance to do anything.
Funny Side cost the guys from Sackets Harbor just $75,000. He won purses totaling more than $3.5 million. Funny Side will now spend the rest of his days in a comfortable stable with a well-earned paddock all his own. For North Country Public Radio, I'm Brian Mann in Saratoga Springs.
Brian's story about Sunnyside originally aired back in 2003. Sunnyside died over the weekend in Saratoga Springs. We've got more news all the time at ncpr.org. Also on our website is our latest news survey on healthcare. The NCPR newsroom is planning a series on healthcare in the North Country for this fall, and we need your help. We want to hear about your experiences. Do you have to travel for care? Have you ever had to forego care? And what you tell us will help us decide what questions to ask and what stories to tell. About 300 people have already taken the healthcare survey so far. You can too at ncpr.org. There's a link to the survey right on the homepage. Music today was by Billy McInnes in Brockville and Dan Duggan in Lake Clear. I'm Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.